Inflation is back. Okay, according to Yahoo News, U.S. inflation is expected to jump 3.6% in April alone, economists forecast. U.S. consumer prices are expected to have risen by 3.6% in April over their level a year ago, a prospect already spooking markets and could fuel concern that inflationary pressures are setting in. According to a consensus forecast assembled by Refinitiv, the Bureau of Labor Statistics will on Wednesday report that its consumer price index rose from 2.6% in March to 3.6% last month compared with the same month in 2020. Stripping out food and energy costs, the CPI is expected to rise from 1.6% in March to 2.3% in April on an annual basis. Okay, and the truth is that it is worse than that. Okay, according to the Consumer Price Index summary from the BLS, the index for all items less food and energy rose 0.9% in April, its largest monthly increase since April 1982. So you have the biggest inflationary increase in 40 years happening right now. Again, this is according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's a government source. Nearly all major component indices increased in April, along with the index for used cars and trucks. The indices for shelter, airline fares, recreation, motor vehicle insurance, and household furnishings and operations were among the indices with a large impact on the overall increase. The all items index rose 4.2% for the 12 months ending in April, a larger increase than the 2.6% increase for the period ending March. Similarly, the index for all items less food and energy rose 3.0% over the last 12 months, a larger increase than the 1.6% rise over the 12-month period ending in March. So in other words, we have now basically doubled the inflation rate over the course of the last month or so. The energy index rose 25.1% over the last 12 months. The food index increased 2.4%. So, I mean, unbelievable levels of inflation setting in almost immediately, despite the fact that you've got the entire Biden administration saying there's no problem to see here. Here's Jen Psaki at the White House literally yesterday saying any inflation will be transitory.
Of course, we take the possibility of inflation quite seriously. As you know, actions that have been taken to date or proposals that have been made, most economic analysts have believed that it will have a temporary or transitory impact. But in terms of analysis on current events, I would point you to the Federal Reserve.
Okay, and quick note, where is Joe Biden? He's completely missing in action. You got a conflict in the Middle East. You have massive inflation hitting. You have gas shortages that have basically knocked out half the gas stations on the East Coast. And Joe Biden is nowhere. He's watching Matlock. Well done, everybody. Well, but at least there are no mean tweets. At least you don't have any mean tweets. That's really, important stuff. No mean tweets.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Jose Prado of Man-Made Survival. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel and watching this video. I really do appreciate it because today's video is going to be pretty much part 2 of what we were talking about yesterday, but this one is going to have a more serious tone. And more than likely, I'm going to be able to do everything today, like talk about everything within this hour, instead of splitting into 2 parts, because, I said yesterday that we were going to talk about the economy, how the shortages were going to affect us, and things about the weather. I really do think I might be able to squeeze everything together, but I guess we're going to have to wait and see. Because, there's a lot of aspects that you have to look at when we're talking about these complex issues, because really what we're looking at right now is that we're going to be blending all of these issues together, and that's really the recipe for hyperinflation. And really, the reason that today's podcast is going to have a more serious tone is because although we're having issues with the economy and we're having issues with shortages, when you bring in the aspect of farmers not being able to grow anything because of the weather, or, weather-related events or natural events, whatever you want to call it, as bad as things are with the economy, if there's nothing that the farmers can grow, that's only going to accelerate the hyperinflation, even if the economy doesn't collapse, quote unquote. Because that is naturally when the farmers don't have anything to give, because, food goes into everything that you eat, right? In all the ingredients, whether it's the, fruit bars, whether it's, canned goods, whatever the case may be, they all have to do with the farmer. If the farmer don't have any water and they cannot grow any crops, doesn't matter how much the economy is strong, it's going to make the price of everything inflate because there's very little of it. And everybody's going to panic then. If you thought that the gasoline was something that people panicked about, just wait until everybody figures out that food is going to be very, very scarce in the coming weeks. All right. So again, this is not something that could happen in the next week or two, but the issue that we're going to be talking about today is going to accelerate everything a lot faster. So you cannot really put a timestamp on it, but you can really, look at those issues and look into the future, trying to gauge where things are going to be. All right. So I started this video with what Ben Shapiro said, because we talked about the economy on the previous one, and now again we're talking about the CPI. The reason that the CPI is so important is because it really shows how much you're paying in the grocery stores. It shows how much you're paying in the gas pumps. It shows how much you're paying for clothing, for shoes, for glasses, whatever the case may be, whatever it is that you need day to day, that the supply chain supplies you every single day. When those prices become inflated, the people at the bottom of the economic ladder, they're the ones who start drowning first. Okay, so as things get worse, and they're going to progress and getting worse, and if the farmers cannot get anything into the market, that's just going to accelerate. It's going to be like a big hole into a ship. It's just going to go down faster if the hole gets bigger, and that's where we are right now. All right, so if 3 and 4% inflation scares the markets and the government, then what will 10 to 40% do? Not just for the market and the government, but also for your pocket. That's the question that I asked yesterday, because we are seeing about 3 to 4% inflation right now. And the markets are freaking out. The president is paying attention, or at least the White House or the press secretary, whatever. The Fed is talking about it. They're having conferences about it, and they're telling people not to worry about it. We have the mainstream media talking about it, the alternative media. So again, if just that small percentage, that's over above the 2% that the Fed has said that's their goal, their average for the year. If they're freaking out over that, what are we going to look like when it gets to 10, 30, 40%? It's going to be a lot worse. And for people who are dependent on the government, giving them the food stamps, giving them, all these all these social safety nets, they're the ones who are going to see the ship going down a lot faster than the people in the deck above. So if you're in the lower rungs of the economic ladder, you have to make sure that you get prepared as quickly as you can. Again, there's two sets of groups in this. People who have plenty of money that they can make purchases every day, or continue or make progressions in their preparedness each and every day, and that money doesn't really affect them much. And then there's the people who have very limited income and they have to take baby steps. You have to make sure that you look at everything that you have and you make the right smart purchase. Again, do not just focus on one thing, because that could be just the very thing that brings you down. Because you may have, 100 cans of tomato soup, but you don't have anything else to go with it. You may have 100 guns, but you have no bullets for them. Just make sure that you are balancing yourself very well, so when everything comes down the pipe, you're gonna be better off. Your flotation device is gonna bring you up to the top, and that's what preparedness does. It's really the flotation device for the people in the lower rungs of the economic ladder. All right, so something that has been happening here recently, and it's something that we have discussed here in the past, is that products are really getting smaller over the years because of inflation. We have had inflation for a while now, but since the supermarkets have had the brilliant idea of really making sure that we cannot see the difference, then that's how we keep the people, at peace. Because they might keep the, let's say the bag of cereal the same size, but the content inside is going to be a lot smaller. That is one of the things that we have noticed with potato chips, but it's also happening with other products. So the video that I'm going to be showing you right now is going to go into detail about what shrinkflation is. And it's probably something that you have heard before, but let's just go over it again and make sure that we have that in the back of our minds when we go into the grocery store, so we can start paying attention to the price differences, because there's going to be a point where the inflation gets so high that they cannot make the content inside the box or whatever any smaller, and they have to actually increase the price. Well, they might do both. They might increase it and decrease the content and increase the price. But that's when we'll know that we're getting into very bad territory with the inflation. All right, so let's go ahead and listen to this video. Pay close attention to the details that I have edited out of this video. Here it is.
Does it always feel like your favorite products are getting smaller? Is the quality not what it used to be? Could they have fallen victim to shrinkflation? How can it be possible for something to shrink, but at the same time inflate? Shrinkflation is the practice of reducing the size or quantity, or reformulating and sometimes even reducing the quality of a product whilst maintaining or increasing its original price. This in turn raises the price of goods per unit of volume of a given product, causing its relative value to inflate, and in turn making consumers pay more for less. Thus, the biggest victims of shrinkflation are families, due to the fact that they are more likely to consume a greater range of diverse products, and therefore are more likely to be negatively affected by the rising cost of living. The combination of inflation and shrinkflation has also affected the millions of people struggling with food insecurity. In 2017, the Food Standards Agency carried out a survey as part of its biennial review of consumer attitudes towards food, and found that 1 in 4 low-income households struggles to eat regularly or healthily because of a lack of money. And over a third of families reported that they had to either reduce the quality of their diet or miss meals out altogether. This is also evidence of the number of food banks going up in the UK.
All right, so important video because, it shows that how shrinkflation works, and not only that, but it also shows the other part where it's telling you that it's going to affect families the most. And this is something that we have not really considered much when we're talking about preparedness, because if you're a single person, right, if you're living by yourself, you have your own apartment, you may even have roommates, but you have no family to worry about, then if you're just worrying about yourself, then you only eat so much, and not really have to worry about it so much. That's not where the desperation comes per se. Where the desperation will come is from people who have families, especially their larger families, right? The typical household is about 4 people, mom, dad, and 2 children. Sometimes there's 5. But when it comes to a family being 2 or more, it is very difficult for mom and dad to think about other things and be more productive when they have to worry about feeding themselves and the children that they have. I experienced this myself when I was in Mexico, when I was over there trying to get my papers fixed, where I experienced the type of poverty that I've never experienced in the United States. And also, I did not experience it to that extent as I did the second time when I lived there the first time. So once you're thinking and you're actually responsible for your children, and at that time I only had 1 kid with me and my younger brother, it was difficult for me to look at my son and watch him cry because the little food that I was able to provide for him was not enough. We only survived on $1 a day. That's how much we ate on. And the type of food that we were eating, it was just noodle soup, not even chicken in it, just noodles. And over time, that's not going to be very nutritious. It's not really going to fill you anymore. It might fill you the first week that you're eating it, but it's not going to feed you up from, for 2 to 3 months. It gets to the point where you don't want it anymore, and your body pretty much rejects it, and you don't feel full anymore. Your body begs for something else because it's lacking all this other stuff. So that's where preparedness really comes in. And I wish I would have known that when I was over there. I wish I would be more proactive in the little of preparedness that I knew, because I could have started a garden, on the roof of the building that we were living. We could have started something, it would have been more productive to start growing our own food and being able to have a little extra growing from whatever it is that we had. And even though I'm pretty sure that if I would try something like that, then it would have failed. But at least it would have been something that I could be more proactive on. If I would have had the knowledge that I have now, then my son would not have had to worry about eating, on a regular basis. Neither would have my brother, and neither would have I, because, I'm pretty sure with the knowledge that I have now, it would have been something that I could have provided then. But, you live, you learn. In some cases, when it's too late, you just have to learn, and you may not get to live. But hopefully you're paying attention to this, and you're going to think, all right, if the economy is getting so bad that things are inflating, the CPI is going up, the consumer price index, which reflects what you're paying in the grocery stores, if that is going bananas, is going up, and companies are taking the steps to make sure that everything gets, reduced as far as the product is concerned, so we don't have to pay more, it's going to get to the point where they're going to have to increase even more and also increase the price. I hope I said that right. Decrease the product inside and increase the price. And then it's going to get to a point where we hit that inflation where it doesn't really matter anymore for companies to try to do anything. And it's just going to affect everyone's pocket. Again, the people who are going to be in the lower rungs of the economic ladder, they're the ones who are going to be affected most first. All right? And depending on where you are on that ladder is how much you're going to be affected. Again, people who are able to move out of the country without an issue, they're gonna do it. All right. Again, we saw that with the CEOs who just resigned their companies and they just moved to Switzerland when the pandemic hit. It's gonna be the same thing when inflation gets really bad in the United States. Now, here are 17 companies who are already saying that they're gonna have to pretty much cut their products in the coming months and years because of inflation. 17 well-known food companies have recently warned about rising levels of inflation. B&G Foods, Bellring Brands, Campbell Soup, Conagra Brands, Flour Foods, General Mills, Hostess Brand, J&J Snacks Foods, Kellogg, Kraft Heinz, McCormick, Mondelez, Nomad Foods, Post Holdings, Hain Celestial, Hershey, and Treehouse Foods. And just look at that list, all 17 of them, and look at your pantry and see if you have any of those in your pantry. And depending on how many of those you have, you already know you're going to be affected by inflation, and you're going to be hit with the shrinkflation. All right, so the article that I have for you right now it really shows what is happening in other areas of the world who are already going through all of this. And the reason that we have to look outside of this country is because it's not yet going on inside the country. All right, it's the same principle that worked when the pandemic first hit in Asia. As far as China is concerned, Hong Kong, Singapore, and other places over there, since they don't know how to prepare, they don't know the principles of preparedness, they were trying to deal with the issue the best they could understand. So they wore feminine pads, they wore orange, pills, they wore plastic bottles, they wore, all kinds of crazy things. And people in the West, including the United States, they laughed. You would see the comments of people mocking those people on the internet. So if you don't know how to deal with this, because it's not happening in the country, then you have to look outside the country to get a better perspective of things that are going on. So that is the reason why I want to bring you this article from Al Jazeera about how bad it really is in Nigeria. So we can get an idea, we can look at the problems they're having and try to fix them before they become evident. All right. So the article comes from Al Jazeera, and the title is, "It is really bad. Nigeria goes hungry as food inflation soars. It's really bad. I can simply afford to give my children what they really need in terms of food," say Boliji, a mother of 3 in her 50s based in southern city of Ibadan. Quote, I try to make them get the nutrition they need as growing children, but it is not enough, end quote, she said, adding, I have had to cut down on meat and fish, end quote. Food inflation rose to 22.95% in March, caused by wide-ranging prices increase across the items such as cereals, yams, meat, fish, and fruits. Those soaring costs have been in part blamed on worsening conflicts between farmers and herders in Nigeria's agricultural belt that Buhari has struggled to squash. The unrest, combined with more than decade-long Boko Haram insurgency in the north, a weakening currency, and higher fuel prices have also contributed to rising food prices, according to SBM Intelligence, a Nigerian research firm. Until then, Nigerians, who already spend more than half their earnings in food, have had to cut down. Just over 50% of all households reported reducing consumption between July and December last year due to the twin pressure of falling wages and rising food costs, according to Nigeria's statistics agency. All right, so hopefully the things that you heard in this article kind of click with some of the things that are going on here in the United States. Now, remember, earlier I said, what is the inflation going to look like for the rest of the country? If we're anywhere between it's anywhere between 10 and 49%. In Nigeria, they're at 22.95%, and they're hurting greatly. The mothers cannot feed their children. They're not in hyperinflation, right? Because it has to be 50% or above. My point is that if we get to that point, we're going to see the exact same thing here in the United States. And we saw it last year when we had the pandemic going on, when thousands of people across the country were lining up for several hours just to get, a little care package from the food banks. If they were able to do that then, or if they were doing that then, how much more are they going to do it if inflation like this hits? The food banks were saying that they were almost out of food, almost out of money. They almost could not help people. There were several times where they were really close. As far as I know, they never were. They never failed. They were able to help people. They never came to the point where they had turned people around or turned them away without giving them anything for a whole day or anything like that. As far as I know, they were able to help the entire time. What I'm saying is that the prices of the cereals, yam, meats, fish, and everything else going up, more than likely can be products that you can grow in your own backyard. This is the reason why we need a foundation in preparedness. Because what you hear right now in the prepper community is telling you to do whatever you can best with the things you got. But this is what I'm telling you in this podcast. You live in the most rich country in the world. Yes, your economic situation may not be the best. And I'm really hoping that this lasts a lot longer than might look like it might be. Because that's going to give you the opportunity to make, changes in your life, changes in your mentality, in the way you think, to be able to position yourself properly in your preparedness. Because what would happen in an inflation environment is not something that could last just several weeks. It could be something that you could live for the rest of your life. And again, this is where the generational thing comes in, because if our parents would have been preppers back in their day, they would have the land, they would have the gardens, the fruit trees, they would have everything set up right now, and it would be something that they could hand down to their children or their grandchildren. All right. So now is the time for us to do it for our children or our grandchildren. So when this finally happens in the United States, and it seems like it may happen in our lifetime here in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be able to provide them with everything they need. So even if nothing happens in our time, that doesn't mean that our preparedness was, useless, because it could be used later on. So this is why I want to change. I want to revolutionize the prepper mentality, because if we can get this message out to other people around the world, all right, where they're going to be able to grow their own food and have the knowledge and the farming skills, and everybody works together in the community, then they're going to be able to lift themselves up from this food inflation. And they won't have to, the children won't have to grow up eating dirt cakes and eating different things that are not healthy or lack the nutrition. So that is the reason why you have to make sure that you have everything in place right now, or at least working towards it, until this very thing that I just read to you happens in the United States. All right, so let's move on real quick. Let's see. All right, so the next article is just the headline, and it goes perfectly with what I just said. All right, the article comes from the economiccollapseblog.com, and I'm just giving you the title. What will you do when inflation forces U.S. households to spend 40% of their income on food? 40%. And that is not including what the farmers are facing right now. Because if they cannot get any food out of the ground, or maybe not even put food in the ground, then there's not going to be nothing later on down the pipeline. So it's going to be more than 40% on food. But this is just with the inflation that we're facing. All right, so again, that would be 40% of food that you could grow in your backyard. So you would save yourself up to 40% of that money. Because if you had your garden big enough to feed you and your livestock, all right, or you, your alliance, and your livestock, then that's going to cut down on the price of your food. I mean, what are the things that you can get at the store that you eat now that you won't be able to get? Hot Pockets? Maybe. What about, chocolate drinks or some other stuff that is has to be processed? That might be the few things that might be cut out of your diet, but it's not technically going to be a bad thing, all right? But you have to make sure that you position yourself and your alliance to be able to take care of all of this. This is the reason why I push alliances so hard, because it's not just you working by yourself. It's not just you, your spouse, and your small children working by yourselves. If you can bring your uncle, your aunt, your mom, your dad, your siblings, your spouse's siblings, all right, next thing you know, you have 40 people working all together, making sure that everything runs smoothly and everybody will be taken care of. And whatever surplus you have, you can share with the community. And then they're going to be able to bring their relatives. They're going to be able to work on their own thing that they can grow. And then they're going to be able to expand that. And instead of having all this, suffering in the United States, we will have a lot of help. We will have a much better time than otherwise we would. So this is the reason why I preach and I tell you these things, because we can no longer be a selfish prepper community. We have to make sure that we branch out of, outside of that and actually help people out. Because again, people freaked out so easily they did when the gas shortages happened. Now with these plants, these meat packaging plants being hacked, and if food or meat starts to become scarce, people are gonna freak out and they're gonna eat that, or they're gonna go eat they're gonna try and go buy everything. But if you already have everything that you need at home, you're not gonna have to worry about it. You're not gonna have to go and run to the store. And let's say you even were trying to get your regular groceries for the week and you weren't able to because everything was gone, then you just dip into your stockpile. Because hopefully it doesn't last more than a week. But what I'm saying is that let's say that we were in a type of environment that they said this is it for a couple months, so you have to figure out what you're gonna do. At that point, then you put food on the ground. Hopefully you're already doing it, because we're going through spring and summer here in the United States. Hopefully you already have your garden. But if you don't, this is the moment to do it. That way, 30 to 60 days from now, you can have something to eat. If you already have your livestock, if you have your chickens, whatever it is, chickens will give you eggs every single day, and those are the things that you're gonna be able to store or eat each and every day while the supply chain takes care of this issue that they're having with food shortages or whatever. That is exactly what we're going to be facing in the future once these farmers can no longer grow anything. And as I'm going to be sharing with you, I'm thinking in this podcast, because I'm looking at the time, I might be able to put it in. But even if I do split it, all right, we're going to get into how the farmers are being affected by all of this. And I'm going to remind you of a video that was being, pretty much circulated everywhere when the pandemic started. But I'm going to visit that video again, and just whatever, the video is, what the trigger is on that video for the pandemic, you can just substitute any scenario and really would be the same end result. The pandemic showed that. Texas freeze showed that. The gas shortages show that. And probably right now the food shortages are going to show that. But anyways, Now, all of this is pretty much making us go in one direction, and the economic aspect of all of this is making us go towards the third-worldization of America. And this is a term that is in the title of the organicprepper.com. The title of the article is Thridworldization, the slow burning SHTF of America. Thridworldization is a slow burning SHTF for those living in developed countries used to comfort, convenience, and security. Thridworldization is the gradual and inevitable impoverishment of a rich country. It is the visible effect of major crises hidden square on the population, institution, corporations, and even the government. It spreads insidiously in every aspect of daily life and our small circles. Less growth means less wealth, less money circulating for everyone to take care of necessities and obligations. This shrinking economy brings all sorts of declines that affect services, infrastructures, the supply chain, institutions, and changing the population's lives and routines. The economy has a direct impact on the structure and foundation of its social order. As an engineer, I tend to analyze structures and foundations by force of my work before assessing other factors. If those are in bad shape, the rest can be good. That holds true for a family, a company, a city, or a country. All right, so if we are being taken, if we are being led, whether on purpose or by accident, to get to the point where the United States will be a third world country, and I do believe it's going to happen, then you have to make sure that you take care of things right now, because right now, while you're still rich, right, you want to make the purchases of everything that you're going to need. You're going to want to make sure that you position yourself to have a different lifestyle once something happens. You're going to have to mentally prepare yourself for it if you cannot adjust to change easily. So right now, you are getting the information about the Fed printing money, about the government spending that money, about all these social safety nets that now are being sprung up by the Biden administration. You are getting the information about how people are behaving when they see the shortages in things. You are getting the information that the weather is really going to affect every aspect of your life. If the farmers can't get any water to themselves, you are getting all this information, and hopefully you're doing something about it, because if you're not, then that's going to be on you, because I'm doing my part on several things. I'm sharing this information with you. I'm bringing information, I'm doing the research, and then I'm showing it to you. I'm telling you how to prepare. I'm telling you what should be your foundation so you can make sure that everything is taken care of for you and your alliance. So it's up to you to make sure that you're using all these resources and you're actually doing something about it. Okay? If you want to change certain things, that's fine. I don't pretend that everybody's going to agree with me 100%, but you got to at least do something for yourself. The reason that I bring you these foundations that are backed by science, that are backed by, scientific method or whatever, is so it's no longer someone's opinion. All right, you cannot go, you cannot just get an architect and just go by what his opinion is. Or you cannot get a lawyer, of all things, a lawyer, and just go by what he thinks. There are certain things that have to be followed, and preparedness it's not outside of those rules. That's what I'm trying to say. So get yourself someone who has those foundation principles, that it's not just an opinion, that they have scientific reasons for what they're doing. In my opinion, there should not be such a thing as a urban prepper. And the reason I say that is because you should be moving yourself out of the urban areas. These are the areas who are going crazy with the lockdowns, with the riots, with everything that we've seen. It happens in the urban areas. So why would you want to be there? You don't have a lot of space to grow your garden. You don't have a lot of space to even have an alliance. So really, that is not a feasible thing, at least not to me. You should be moving out of the urban areas. If you're in the suburban areas, it's just as bad, because you're very limited. If you're in HOA, zone, you're very limited on what you can do. And if you don't do what they tell you to do, you get fined, even though you're paying for that house. So you have to make yourself free from all of that. Move yourself, or at least your bug out location, to a rural area that is going to have very limited population, and it's very free on what you can do. You know, you can have a shooting range out there. You can have chickens and goats and everything else. You can build things and not have, you know, some commissioner bring down your neck or anything like that. That is the reason why there has to be certain steps in the reasons behind them. Yes, preparedness became very popular, you know, because it has all these cool things. It has this storable food, and it has the flashlights and the guns, and, you know, this method and that method, and just certain things that, even though it's cool to know those things, it's not really going to help you in the long run. I mean, yes, you want to know how to camp and run into the woods if you had to. But are you really going to have to do that first? Is that really going to be the first thing you're going to do? Because if we hit 22.95% or 22.95% inflation, you're not going anywhere. You're not going to run into the woods. You should have already done that, right? You're still going to have to go to work. You're still going to have to pay your rent or your mortgage, or you're going to have to pay for your kids to go to, you know, the ball games and everything like that. You're still going to want to be part of the system because you're already part of the system. So running into the woods is not going to be the first thing you're going to do, right? Knowing certain things that really is not going to help you, it's not going to do you any good. Having all this gear is not going to be any good, right? So you're going to have the things that you need in order for your life to change your lifestyle. That's what I'm trying to do here. So the next video that I have for you is it's a news report on how people were acting when things went down with the gas. And the reason that I want to show you that is because people will react in a certain way. All right? Just listen to the video and I'll be right back. Here it is.
This morning, gas and patience running low at the pump.
I have been here now for an hour and 15 minutes.
Emergency declarations issued in 4 states, with more than 1,700 gas stations from Florida to Maryland out of fuel. It comes on the heels of that crippling cyber attack against a critical U.S. fuel source.
All the gas stations closer to where I live were completely empty.
Americans up and down the East Coast on the hunt for gas, overwhelming some stations.
Do you think people are panicked, or do you think people are just kind of trying to figure everything out?
I think it's probably some panic, like the toilet paper issues a year ago.
Cars bumper to bumper here in the Carolinas and stretching down streets in Florida.
Check out the line.
Nationwide, gas prices reaching their highest point in nearly 7 years. Despite the spike in price and demand, the White House and experts are preaching calm.
Don't be hoarding gas. If you don't really need it, then don't buy it.
But with the Colonial Pipeline still mostly down, the region that relies on the 5,500-mile system for its fuel is feeling an impact.
My fear is you have these gas shortages. It's going to cause a lot of problems for people.
At some stations in South Carolina on Tuesday, cars were turned away.
We're out of gas.
And according to Gas Buddy, nearly 40% of Metro Atlanta gas stations are out of fuel. But these pumps in Tennessee had plenty.
As of right now, there's still a good supply out there, and there's no need to panic.
The long lines, though, already causing a domino effect in some cases.
You want to get groceries, but you can't get groceries. Why?
Because I cannot. Look, you see the line.
All of this pain at the pump as 34 million Americans plan to buckle up and hit the road for the big Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, I guess, Tom, one of the short-term goals is to avoid panic buying of gas. So are there ways that you can conserve gas on your own?
There are, Hoda, and AAA has some tips for our viewers this morning. First, try to run a bunch of errands at once. If you have to go to the grocery store, the pharmacy, pick up the kids from school, try to do that in one shot, and also avoid busy traffic times. But, Hoda, I got to be honest with you. I've been speaking with these drivers last night, this morning. They're telling me that it's very difficult because the average commute time is 30 minutes in America. A lot of these people drive long distances to get to work, and they don't want to get stuck or miss work. Hoda?
This article goes with what you just watched. It took just a couple of days for madness to descend upon America once gas shortages began. Do you react calmly when you learn that a cyber attack against one of our most important pipelines was causing thousands of gas stations to run out of gasoline? Sadly, lots of Americans didn't. They were yelling, they were screaming, there were lots of hoarding, vehicles were waiting in line for hours, at stations that still had gas, and there were reports that brawls were even breaking out between frustrated motorists. Even though we knew that the shortages were just going to be temporary, people were panic buying gasoline as if the apocalypse had arrived. In fact, one energy expert said that this was the worst panic buying for gasoline since the Carter administration. All right, so if this has happened since the Carter administration, then that means it has happened before. So, it's always good to have your preps in place. But that is not what I want to focus on this thing. What I want to focus on several things. One is that people are willing to wait several hours just to get what they think they need. That's exactly what we saw in Venezuela. So, Venezuela will come into this because people would not believe that people would be in line for several days at a time just to try to get into the soup kitchen so they can get something to eat. The same thing for grocery stores and other places once Venezuela became scarce of everything. All right, that was when they were peaking into the worst time of their life, and then things kind of like settle down. Things will always settle down. It's just up to you to know how panicked you're going to be or how prepared you're going to be when something like that happens. All right, so people were getting frustrated very easily. But here's the difference between the gas stations and when people could no longer afford food. Because they did not raid the Walmarts and the other grocery stores. They didn't, right? They went and asked for help somewhere else. They asked for help in the food banks, churches, other, organizations and everything like that. First, they asked for help. So they did not get to the point where they were actually very panicky about, where they're going to get their next meal. That's where we can come into play as a community of preppers. If we can, work with our churches before anything happens, especially if you live in the South like I do, where there's churches everywhere, then something can be set up before something like this, like the shortages really gets a grip of America, and you can have something set up for the communities around the country. And then that panic, it won't be as bad. People will not become marauders overnight. It'll be a slow process and may get there, but in the process of them getting the help, we should be teaching them how to prepare. All right, so I really do think that you should share this one with your friends and family. I might be a little more passionate this time because the information that we're getting and that's coming out, it's really pointing to that point where America will fall apart if we, as a preparedness community, do not come together and try to hold it together and, navigate everyone through the crisis. That's our role in all of this. And I really hope you want to be part of this because I need your help to do it. All right. The very simple free thing that you can do is that you can share this information throughout all your social medias. All right. Whether you have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever the case may be. You can just share it on there and it's free. Maybe no one will like it. Maybe no one will listen to it in your timeline, but at least you make the effort. All right. And then also, you can make a contribution. You can either go to MemoSurvivalStore.com, make a purchase that's going to help you in the end. Or you can make a purchase of the book that I'm working very hard on getting it finished. As far as the marketing part is concerned, with printing the book and getting the title, the cover and all of that. But those are the things that would help me to be able to help other people, as you know. So I would really appreciate it if you did that. All right. So now let's move on. One of the aspects that we have to look at when we're seeing gas shortages or inflation in the gas price is the following article from MSN.com. The article's title is High Fuel Price and Shortages Hit Trucking Industry as Nation Critically Needs Gasoline and Goods Transported. Quote, I start to freak out when it hits $4 a gallon, and I'm paying almost $1,000 to fill up a 240-gallon tank, end quote, said Class, who was in Rhode Island on Wednesday and drives long hours daily. Quote, for me to run across country in my truck, it takes about 3 fill-ups from the West Coast to the East Coast. And that is a lot of money, end quote. So another aspect that we have to add on top of all of this with the inflation is that not only will it get expensive for farmers to run their equipment to mass produce food, it's also going to get expensive for people to transport it, right? To get for the farmer to get it to the processing plant to get it to the grocery stores. Okay, and then if just by the gasoline on the transportation, it's $3,000 because, you know, a lot of the products come from California, which is one of the main places going, you know, suffering with this drought, then it's going to get really expensive. They have to add the cost onto the consumer. And you're going to have the cost of the farmer added to it, the processing plant added to it, and the transportation added to it, and then whatever the grocery stores try to make from it. So there's 4 things that you have to add to the cost of one thing that is going to inflate that much. So if gasoline gets about $4, $5, you know, a gallon, then the price of everything will go up automatically because we run this economy on fuel, right? It's consumer driven and all that consumes gasoline. So now let's move on to the weather aspect of all of this. And this is going to be the last 2 articles of this podcast because I really want you to understand the 2 aspects of all of this. One is the weather, what is happening with the drought, and how, you know, widespread it is, and the effects that's going on with the farmers. They're the first ones hit because, you know, if a farmer has 30,000 acres that they have to water, that same water is going to be transferred to the cities that can, you know, give water to 30,000 people. So here the politicians are going to have to make a call, and they already did it. Do they give the water to the farmers or do they give the water to the citizens? Who is going to be more panicked if there's no water? A couple of farmers or millions of people? You know, eventually it's going to get to everybody's panicking because if the farmers don't have any water, nobody has any food. All right. And there's several details that you really have to pay attention to these articles very closely because the devil is in the detail. This is from Zero Hedge. Western U.S. states prepare for first ever water shortage declaration. Hoover Dam hydroelectric generation at risk. According to the Associated Press, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation's 24th month projection released this week forecasts that less water will flow from the Rocky Mountains through the Lake Powell and Lake Mead and into the southwest desert regions to the Gulf of California. The 2 lakes are expected to suffer from water shortages that could threaten the supply of the Colorado River, which farms and sprawling cities rely on. Lake Mead is projected to fall below 1,075 feet for the first time in June 2021, the level which will trigger the shortage declaration under agreement negotiated by 7 states which are reliant on Colorado River water, which are Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. As Michael Snyder of the Most Important News noted earlier this month, scientists have begun using the term Megadrought to describe the multi-year drought that has been plaguing the western half of the country, and now are being told that it looks like 2021 will be the worst year of this Megadrought so far by a wide margin. That is extremely troubling news because major water reservoirs have already dropped to dangerously low levels. Some farmers have been told that they will not be allowed to use any water at all this year, and the dust storms in the western U.S. are becoming so large that they can actually be seen from space. This is a major national crisis, and it's only going to get worse. As you can see, the latest U.S. Drought Monitor map, nearly the entire western half of the nation is experiencing some level of drought at this moment. But even more alarming is the fact that much of that territory is currently one of the 3 most serious levels of drought. A year ago, about 4% of the West was in severe drought. Now, about 58% of the West is classified as being in a severe, extreme, or exceptional drought. As conditions just get drier and drier, many farmers have become deeply concerned about what that will mean for growing season in 2021. All right, and there's another aspect that I just thought about. China has bought a lot of soybeans and other products from U.S. farmers already. They are planning and they are hoping to get next year's harvest delivered to them. That's the reason they pay in advance. So what is going to happen when the farmers cannot deliver because of this natural phenomenon? All right. So again, the levels of the drought have increased, and an article came out saying that it was supposed to last 1,200 years. That's what they're expecting. We're, I think, on year 20th or something like that. I think the drought started in early 2000s. So we still have 1,100 years to go on that. So even if the drought didn't last that long, all right, we are seeing the evidence right now on where this is going to lead. That is the reason why you have to take the steps right now, especially if you're, in the western part of the country. Luckily, it seems like the eastern side of the country is not in a drought, but that doesn't mean that the drought cannot come this way. So we all have to be proactive right now and make sure that we take care of everything that we can take care of as far as our preparedness is concerned. All right. I have said this time and time again. People will migrate from those areas when they drink their last drop of whatever it is that they have left. It could be juice, it could be water, it could be alcohol, it could be something. But once they drink the last drop, they know that they're 3 days away from dying. So there's going to be mass migration. Okay? So you have to take care of things right now. Now, that was the aspect of what is happening with the climate, with nature. Now let's get into what is happening with the farmers. Let me make sure I didn't forget to mention anything on this. The only thing I can think that I probably forgot to mention is that if the Hoover Dam hydraulic electric generation is at risk, which was part of the title, that will also mean that there will be blackouts throughout that area. Whatever it is that the Hoover Dam supplies. So that is another layer that you have to look at, okay? So if you're very dependent on the grid right now, whether it's because you just used to it, you have a health condition, whatever the case may be, look into that right now, because once this Hoover Dam can no longer produce any electricity, you're going to see the rolling blackouts, especially during, in the hot desert areas when it's going to get, insanely hot and there's going to be no AC anywhere. Now, the last article for this podcast, before I show you that video, is this, and also from Zero Hedge. Follow land plague California's farmers hit by drought. According to Reuters, for farmers like Joe Del Bosque, located in Faribault, California, a third of his 2,000-acre farm is unseated this spring due to extreme drought and the inability to source water. All right, I'm going to pull that from there in just a second. 1/3 of his 2,000-acre farm, he didn't even bother to put seed down, because he knows if there's no water, there's no crop. So why would you spend the money on running the tractors if you know you're not going to get that water, right? That makes economic sense. All right, pay attention to the next part of this article. About 40% of California's 24.6 million acres of farmland is irrigated. State and federal agencies have regulated reservoirs and canals across the state do not have enough water to allocate to farmers. Many of them are leaving their fields unplanted as a result of water shortages. All right, I'm going to pull back on that real fast. 24.6 million acres of farmland are irrigated, meaning that all those acres are nowhere near a river or any type of reservoir or anything like that. They rely 100% on the grid, and they rely 100% on the water company. That is insane. That should really, sound the alarm in your head and say, hey, we're headed for a big deal here. 40% of those 24.6 just went until it's 100% of those 24.6 million acres. If 40% is going to be affected, it's going to be a big blow to the supply chain. But as the drought gets worse, as I just read to you above, it's going to get a lot worse. Maybe it'll get to 100% of those 24.6 million acres not having any water. The article goes on to say, agriculture in the state accounts for 2% of its GDP and employs hundreds of thousands of workers. The state is a top producer of berries, dairy products, nuts, and vegetables. Again, we are seeing the inflation on the food. We are seeing the shortages on the food. And now there's going to be nothing. All those things that you are seeing that are going to be short on are the very things you can grow in your own backyard. So this is the science behind why I tell you that you need to have surface water running through your property all the time, year round. Because when you know you're gonna be having your own garden, growing your own trees, you're gonna be able to water everybody, including your cows for the dairy products, your nut trees, your vegetable trees. Your vegetable garden, your berries. So all of that will be taken care of by your, bug out location with a body of water running through it, or at the very, very least, a rain catchment system and a pond of some sort in your land. All right. Hopefully they won't make it illegal, because if it gets that bad, they're gonna make all of these rain catchment systems illegal. But I guess we'll kind of have to wait and see. All right. The article goes on to say, Del Bosque told Reuters he's taking big risk in planting crops and hoping water gets here in time. Others are reducing crop acreage as there is simply no water to go around. I'm going to be reducing some of our almond acreage. I may be increasing some of our row crops like tomatoes, says Stuart Wolf, who operates 30,000 acres in western Fresco County. Wolf said about 30% of 9,000 acres will be followed this growing season because of water shortages. Ernest Conant, Regional Director of the Bureau of Reclamation, California Great Basin Region, the federal agency that manages dams, canals, and water allocation in the western U.S., said, quote, "We simply do not have enough water to supply our agricultural users. We're hopeful some water can be moved sooner than October, but there are no guarantees," end quote. If arid conditions continue in the Southwest, there will be epic crop failures by the end of this year's growing season. This suggests U.S. food production will be impacted, fueling inflation at supermarkets. Now Dust Bowl conditions are returning, and farmers, ranchers, and local authorities can't do anything about it. You are given a timeline there, right? This is why it's important to bring you the news and bring you the analysis, because they're giving you the timeline. One of the biggest things in preparedness is that we never had any timelines. It was always something that could happen in the future. But now we're having the timelines here. They're telling you when we could see the crop failure by the end of this growing season. That means that next year is going to be very difficult, and that's going to fuel the inflation on all of these things. Now, I'm going to bring you back to what I said at the beginning. You have the economic collapse going on, or at least, an economic depression at the very least. And then you have companies trying to do their best to cope with the inflation by reducing the product inside their containers. But all of that is going to be blown out of the water if farmers cannot bring anything in. The U.S. is going to be forced to try to buy somewhere else. But guess what? This problem is worldwide. This is something that Mexico is experiencing. This is something that Australia is experiencing. China is certainly experiencing this. African countries are experiencing this. Other countries in South America who are very, I guess you can say export-rich countries are experiencing this. Asian countries have said, we're not going to be sending any of our rice or anything like that because we got to feed our own population. I don't know if he's prime minister or president of Australia, he pretty much twists Thailand's president arm so he would sell him rice. So we are going to see the food inflation. We're going to see food riots. We're going to see countries fighting over food and water. All right. And all of this is just going to be more things you have to prepare for. But again, the foundation principles that I give you will cover all of this, because even if you're not able to help, right? I've been telling you this whole time, I want the prepper community to step up, be a community leader, and say, this is what we can do. But even if things get so dicey that you cannot help, what I've taught you with, with your security will take care of anybody who's trying to steal your stuff. So yes, you will potentially get to the point where people are gonna force you to use your tactical team to defend your property, but it's gonna be a last resort, hopefully. It's not gonna be the first thing that happens. But if you're already in an area where it's very isolated, or at least the most as it can be, that is gonna be one of the very last things you're gonna have to worry about. So right now, land in America is available. There's a lot of property with available water, through it year round. You can make the transition as soon as you can, because we are seeing the writing on the wall. Right now, everybody's talking about inflation. Next thing, they're going to be talking about the food shortages because farmers cannot plant anything. All right? We're ahead of the game. We're early to this party, and it's better to be early than late. So the last video that I have for you for this podcast is Tom's Clancy, The Division, all right? And this is the one video that was being posted everywhere when Joe Biden said that we were going to a dark winter. And somebody mentioned it before him, but the point is that because of that, this video went everywhere. And I pointed out in this podcast, if you remember, that even though this is a video game, the drill that was being presented in the video is actually a real thing. It is a drill that the U.S. government actually did do. All right, we looked up the the papers, we read them and everything. Yes, it was a real thing. Now, the emphasis in this video is a pandemic, and that's what everybody was focusing on because we were going through a pandemic. But what I really showed you that the video was really about was the supply chain, because the pandemic was the trigger that made the entire supply chain fall apart. Now, I want you to replace the pandemic that they're showing this video with any scenario you want to place there, because the end result is the same. Everybody will be freaking out because the collapse will be so rapid, or could be so rapid. So I'm going to play the entire length of this video, and I'm going to be closing it. So I really hope you pay attention. Before I let you go, I want to remind you that the store is still open, memensurvivalstore.com. The book is coming out. I'm still giving away Prepper Secret Cash for free. You can go to the front page of memensurvivalstore.com and you can get that free copy. Really, all we need your help is with the shipping. The shipping is $9.99. And the book retails for $24.99. So you are, in fact, getting it for free. And, continue your preparedness. If you can support us in any way, I would really appreciate it. And make sure that you present all this information to the people who are closest to you so they can be persuaded into preparing while they still have a chance. All right. So, again, my name is Jose Prado, and remember, always ready.
Peggy 18.
In 2001, a real-world exercise tested the emergency response to a bioterror attack on the continental United States. The operation was called Dark Winter. Within just a few days, the simulation spiraled out of control. The operation predicted a rapid breakdown in essential institutions, civil disorder, and massive civilian casualties. Dark Winter has revealed how vulnerable we've become. Our lifestyle, our security, our safety depends on a delicate and unstable economy. We've created a system so complicated that we no longer understand how to control it. Oil, power, shipping, transport. We live in a complex world. And the more complex it gets, the more fragile it becomes. The system is built on a global supply chain that gets things where they're needed, just in time. We've created a house of cards. Remove just one, and everything falls apart. And what's fueling this system?
Money. Americans can spend $90 billion in a single day of shopping. Last year, 200 million people swarmed their local stores on November 23rd. We call that day Black Friday. Did you know that a flu virus can survive on the surface of a banknote for up to 17 days? One day, there will be a pandemic. It could begin during the crush of Black Friday sales. A pathogen will jump from tainted banknotes to human skin, onto food, toys, children, and loved ones. By the time patient zero feels the first sore throat, millions of people will already be infected. From this point, the breakdown will happen fast.
Day 1, hospitals will reach capacity. Panic will strike. Day 2, quarantine zones will be established. Resources will be rationed. Transport will go into lockdown. Day 3, international trade will stop. The oil will dry up. The stock market will collapse. Day 4, the power will fail. The shelves will be empty. The taps will run dry. And once hunger and despair take hold, people will do anything for survival. By day 5, everyone will be a potential threat.
In 2007, a new presidential directive was signed quietly into law. This maps out the government's response to a crisis, a plan to cope with a real dark winter. It is known as Directive 51. There are rumors of shadow agencies, sleeper cells, covert agents, but nothing can be confirmed.
Our complex world is primed for breakdown.
And once the chaos strikes,
there won't be resources to save us all.
The only question left is, what will it take to save what remains?
The Man-Made Survival Show.